And we are live again. What is going on with everybody? It is your boy, Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Green Dungeon, giving it to you raw rugged. And before I get into this review, not this review, I'm so used to reviewing stuff. Before I get into this interview, I'm usually not eating in my reviews, but I haven't ate since I don't know, probably 2 days, honestly. I probably haven't ate since, what is it, Thursday? Probably Tuesday. I did not eat at all Wednesday. So I'm
Uh,
super hungry, so if you see me eating, hey, sorry. If you're mad about it,
that
hey, go kick rocks. I don't care. I'm very hungry right now. Um, and then two, usually I let the people who I interview introduce themselves, but I want to introduce you, man,
okay.
because I feel like I have to explain you just a little bit. So, not only would I assume you've probably been interviewing people less than me, many less years than me, you're probably a little bit better than I am already, and that's why I had to interview. Cause I was like, wow, this guy is probably been doing it less time than me, already surpassing me. And I was like, and then I look at your views when I find you, you get like 90, 70, 60 views. I'm like, yo, why doesn't this have way more views than it has? So I'm not the biggest person of all time, but I thought that if I could interview you, maybe you can get a couple subscribers, and maybe that can help it a little bit because I really want you to be the freaking next Joe Rogan or whoever the biggest podcasters are out there and interviewers out there. So with no further ado, I have Felix Levine on the other line. Welcome, man.
Thank you so much for all those kind words. I do I agree with you on the more views? Of course, I'd always love more views. But yeah, and I think it's in due time. For me, it's a grind. It's weird. I have some videos might have 50 views. Some might have, like, my best one has 35,000. So it's a weird kind of range. And that's one thing I'm working on. It's just more consistency. But I've looked at some of your stuff, and you're a great interviewer. So I'm excited to be on your show. So thank you for having me.
Another reason why I had you on because I was like, watch, when I asked this guy for your interview, he's going to research me like he's finna interview me. So I was like, I know he was finna get in his interviewer bag because you are such a professional guy. So before we even get into this, let me say how I found you. So I was about to interview Mark Norman for the second time, actually. So I was like, let me see if we've done any more new interviews. Pop up and I see this. And I'm like, wow, this has like not a lot of views, but the quality looks really high. That's odd. So I was like, let me just give this a watch. Watch the interview. Really good stuff. Didn't think too much of it. I was like, it's a cool interview. Early this week, I just interviewed Adam Lefko. See you interview Adam Lefko. So I'm like, oh, who is this guy? Why does this guy keep popping up? So I watch it again, and I'm like, yo, this interview is also great. So I just keep watching interviews. I'm like, yo, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who this white feller is, but this guy's amazing. And yeah, man, I just had to tap you in, man. So once again, you are really, really good at what you do. You just had to reiterate that for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really, really appreciate that, and it means a lot. It's weird when you first start these things. You probably know you might not even expect people to watch.
Yeah.
So to have that and for you to say those nice things really means a lot. Thank you.
Well, hey, I would love to trade stories on just like how we got into this or whatever. So always hate for my interviews to feel like interviews, more like conversations. So if you have a
Right.
question, don't feel free to interview me if you want to, because I know that's how you are. So just want to let that out there. So first, how did you start, and how long have you been doing this?
So for me, it's been just over a year. And the way that it started for me was last year. I was in school for my freshman year of college in California at UC Santa Barbara. And so I'm originally from New York City, so it was a pretty far place to go, and I was pretty unhappy. I was just not, like, I didn't want to be there. I was looking to transfer, come back eastward just because I miss the East Coast. I like it just much better than the West Coast. And and so I basically, like, about 2 or 3 months into going to school there, I knew I was going to be out of there, and I just really isolated myself socially, basically every way.
Mm.
And I'm usually someone who's pretty social. I like to hang out with people, talk to people. And so it was very, like, uncharacteristic of me, I guess. But I just, I figured I'm going to be out of here soon. What's the point? I was kind of, I don't know, just kind of not losing hope, just like, all right, whatever. Like, this year's kind of, prepare yourself to get to a good school and get out of here and whatnot. And so I had a lot of spare time on my hands. And so, I'd go to school. I only had a couple hours of class a day, maybe a couple hours of homework. And then I was like, all right, let me listen to this Joe Rogan guy. I'm a huge UFC fan. I knew Joe Rogan. I knew his podcast was great, but I never listened.
Mm.
So it was maybe like, a year and a half ago that I listened to my first podcast, and it was Rogan. And then I basically just fell in love with his show, for the reason that so many other people do. And I think some people want to call him controversial. I don't really see it like that. I think if you truly listen to Joe Rogan enough, you realize that he has all the good intentions in the world. That's just my opinion. And so, whatever. So I started listening to a ton of Rogan, and I just felt like, I would be thinking of things, and then a few minutes later, maybe he would be asking them. Or, like, I just had these moments where I was like, wow, like, I feel like I could do this. The people that he was having on were super cool. I mean, they're from every walk of life. And then for me personally, my interests are not just sports or this or the other thing. It's like, I'm really interested in hearing from people who are, just the best at what they do. And so I was like, all right, like, I was kind of thinking about this idea for a couple months. And then, at one point I'm like, just do it, let's see where it goes. And so I started my show, right back in Santa Barbara. I knew one of my dad's close friends who was a professor and had written a bunch of books. So I was like, all right, maybe he can be my first guest. He's local. I'll find a studio. I'll have someone do my logo. Started really like that, and found that studio. That audio engineer is still my audio engineer to this day, even though I left Santa Barbara. That studio happened to be a really, really great studio. It was this really tiny place. And then from there, I had him. Then I had one of my friend's dads, who's also a famous author. And then I had a UFC fighter. And then, Mark Norman comes on not too long after. And then it's like all these, like, it's like a snowball effect. And, now to the point where, guests that were maybe saying no a year ago are starting to say yes now. And so for me, it was just like, I was working really, really hard. I was sending out so many emails, I was trying to get different sponsors, doing all these different things, staying up till 4 or 5 a.m. I mean, really every day it was a grind. And now, here I am a year later in a spot that I'm really happy with. I'm not satisfied yet because I just feel like, I'm not going to be complacent, but there's, at least I feel like I have the foundation, and now it's really about promoting and marketing, as you say. Like, there's some things that I wish just had more views, had more traction. So, we'll see. But that's basically how I got started.
Man, your Adam Lefkoe interview definitely needs more reviews. That's a really, really good interview. I like the fact that he was invested into you. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, I don't know if you've had that interview yet, but you're gonna have
Right.
interviews where.
Wait, you just cut off real quick.
Can you hear me? Am I good?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that I think it was cool that he was invested into you because I don't know if you had that interview yet, but you're gonna have an interview where you're very invested in that person. And they're not too invested in talking to you. So I think that the fact that he was, he got into his psychology bag where he was reading you and you were asking questions. I think that's so cool. So I feel like interviews like that where it's just so natural. He's shouting out your sponsor with the drink. Like, I think that's great stuff. So, like, when you're doing these interviews, do you feel the need to have it like more conversational, or do you want to have it structured? Are you trying to find the balance in between the two? Are you flowing off the top? Like, how are you going to the interviews, I guess, preparing wise?
Yeah, that's a really great question because you said in the beginning about you like the interview to feel more like a conversation, right? And that was really what I thought, what I hope to do. I think I'm still not at that point yet where it's fully a conversation. I still feel like the dynamic for the most part is still me asking questions and guiding, which it'll always be like that. I'm always be the one to guide. But yeah, I always tell people the same thing you told me. I like when things just sound more of like a conversation rather than an interview. And in terms of my preparation, it's just it's developed over the time. Now I'm about 40 episodes in or so, and in the beginning, I was like so like stressed out about what's the next question? How am I gonna make it sound good? And I realized I would walk out of those hour sit downs, and I would have no idea what they said. Like, I'd have to re-listen to remember what they had said. And I realized I was just simply not listening, right? I was just too stressed out about that next question, that next thing. And my whole thing was, you know, do the research and know your guest better than, they know themselves is kind of the mindset. And so that's always like, that's still my mentality, but now my mentality more when I get in is, sometimes I'll have over the time, actually, I've had less and less questions written out. I usually have just a sheet just to make sure that I hit a few things that I want to get to. But in the beginning, I'd be writing all these like questions, and I realized I wasn't using any of them. And then what I started to realize was my best questions were the ones that I were when I was truly listening, were the ones that I was able to create on the spot, right? Just like, I think when you truly listen to someone, and for me, I had this like kind of mentality that I would tell myself, like, all right, lock in, which is really like lock into what the words that are coming out of their mouths, and not like what's going on in your head. That's when I was started to produce, the better questions, the more interesting conversation. I wasn't looking down. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't rambling, right? So, in terms of preparation, I just think, I mean, you said it, like, I think being professional and the way you are, and I think the way a lot of people who have good shows are, is really important, because I just think professionalism in general goes a long way. But then I think really listening to your guest, and the thing that I love about Rogan is, and why that's one thing that I really try to do that he does, or try to at least improve upon, is, he just, you feel him super calm, you feel that his conversations it's him and, if it's his friends, it's him and his friends, and they're really having authentic conversations. If it's, an Elon Musk or someone of that nature, he's still like, he shows genuine curiosity. So, I mean, I don't know. What's your preparation like?
Man, you call me professional. You lie, because I'm not professional at all, man. I'm trying to learn from you, man. My preparation is changed from like, because I've been doing it for 5 years, so, or 5 6 years. How old are you? How was that? It's funny. I think I'm probably like 1 year older than you. I just turned 21.
Okay, yeah, I just turned 20 a couple months ago.
Yeah, so we were the same age basically. So I started this in high school,
Wow.
and I mean, I guess I kind of like go back on my story. Like I feel like, because I think Adam kind of mentioned this in the interview. You seem like a very calculated person. You're very organized. You want to have everything planned out or whatever. While me, I'm just a very messy, unorganized person in general, and that's kind of how this started. Like, make a long story short, I was at a rap concert, and I wore this. It was this Gucci Mane t-shirt I had, and this when Gucci Mane was in jail, and it was just, my friend designed it, and it looked so interesting, and I was like, if I wear this, somebody's gonna compliment me on it. So I wore it. Long story short, we were backstage talking to one of the rappers. He says, "Hey, can I buy your shirt off of you?" And I was like, "No, you can't." But my friend, he makes the t-shirts, and he's right here. So he was like, "Oh, get him." So I get my friend. He was like, "I don't have any t-shirts on me." He was like, "Well, I'll ride to your house." So the rapper hops in the house with us. Hops in the car with us. We go to my friend's house. He's asking everybody what they do for a living. I made up something. It was like, I interview people. Never interviewed my day in my life. And then the next day he was like, "Yo, interview me." So I ended up interviewing him, and that's how I kind of started. And my preparation from then just was kind of like, I'll look up a couple stuff, and I'll just wing it or whatever. But as I kept going, probably like 3 years in, I was on some like I don't know. It just really depended on who I was interviewing, because I felt like I could do an interview with no research and have a good interview. But right now today, I think I'm like I don't know, man. Like I do as much research as I can. Like, I want to be super duper prepared. And if they mention something, I'm like, oh, it's funny you mentioned that, because I have information on that. And
Right.
I just want to be like well knowledgeable on things. Like, I'm in school right now. I'm in college, so I love history. So if somebody mentions something, I could take it back to a historical reference point and try to better explain why they may be in the situation. Just so, I mean, I just try to prepare from them to school to history to map. I just try to bring in everything together. So that's how I do my thing for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Especially, I mean, starting at 15, I can't even imagine that, because I started at 19. So, that's and that's really cool, because over the years, I'm sure you have just, I mean, you grow and you learn and you see what works and what doesn't. And to be honest, I think being prepared is really important. But I think I've found that there's like a point of diminishing return, right? Like, you can only prepare so much, and there are some things that I like with certain guests too. It really depends. That I do like to just do minimal preparation
Yeah.
to know the whole gist, but I like to learn on the spot, right? Like I had a guest that he's this famous man named David Sinclair. He's like this famous author who wrote a book about anti-aging. He's like a leading biologist, like shit that I would not know 1% of what he's doing, right? I wouldn't understand it. There's no point in trying to learn it. The guy spent 30 years in these like with little atoms and molecules, stuff that I have no idea about. So for that one, it was like, all right, know the gist, but I'm there to learn, and so that's a very different vibe too. So I think there's no real way to do it, but I do think that doing things professionally, which you and I are doing, is at least that and then is good to do, and then from there, everyone has their own different style.
Well, maybe this will work for you, but this is something that like a little like thing I do with people. For example, I know you've been interviewing a lot of UFC fighters. Last year was my first time interviewing UFC fighters. I interviewed two UFC fighters who were black.
Who'd you interview?
I interviewed, what is his name? Violent Bob Ross. What is his real name?
Yeah.
Luis Pena and Sadiq Yusuf. So
Okay.
interviewed those two, and I looked at all their interviews. And one thing that I realized, this is just like a specific situation, but this can apply to anything. I'm looking at all their interviews, and all their interviews like 90% by white people. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So when I do my interview, I'm like, I'm going to make them feel at home, because I know when they're getting interviewed by these white people, they don't know certain stuff about like black culture, just black things or whatever. They're just interviewing them as a UFC fighter. So when I do the interviews, both at the end of the interviews, they're like, "Yo, that was like the best interview. Like, you made me feel at home, you made me feel comfortable." So usually, what I do when I look at people's interviews, I'm like, "Okay, they've asked this question 50 million times. Let me not ask that question. Let me ask him something that I know that he'll probably be interested in, that nobody will ever ask him." And I feel like when you do that, that subconsciously clicks something in their brain, like, "Yo, like this is like I'm talking to a friend or a homeboy or whatever." So that's something that I do. I just really try to hit on the little things that they don't even realize that, wow, this feels like I'm just having a conversation on the street rather than being interrogated or interviewed by somebody. That's just something that I do. I think it may work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think especially with people, when you talk about a UFC fighter or someone who's got some fame, right? They're always asked the same boring questions all the time, like, oh, what do you think about your next opponent, stuff like that. And I think to an extent, if I have a UFC fighter with an upcoming fight, I think I would be, I think it would be unprofessional almost to not ask at least, what do you think of your next fight, right? But not to spend the whole interview talking about it. And I think that's what I try to do with some of them is have them kind of tell maybe a little bit about their story in the beginning, so that I feel like it's always better to tell your own story than have someone else, tell your whole life story. But then afterwards, it's, I feel like I always, throughout my episode, just, you're building kind of trust, right? You're building comfort, and I think, the reason that so far I've had some guests that have reached out and said a lot of positive things is just because I think that, what you talked about, like that level of comfort, and when people are comfortable, that's when they start revealing the most interesting stuff, right? So it's a process, and I don't think people that don't conduct interviews or these kind of sit downs really understand that development. But I really see it, where in the beginning, when they come to the studio, it's the first time I'm meeting them, right? For the most part, and so it's like, okay, how do I get someone to open up to me who doesn't know me, in front of a camera, in front of a microphone? And so there's a lot of different things that go on in your head, but the ones that mean the most to me are the ones where they open up, they share something they haven't talked about, and there's a lot of ways to do it, but the reality is comfort. And I think when you have these like shallow, surface level conversations about, oh, what do you think about this, and you already know the answer, just so you can have them say it on your show, I think it's a waste of time. But there's a right balance to everything.
And I think comfortability also speaks of the interviewer, because I feel like you have to be comfortable with yourself. Because I think the best interviewers are people who know who they are, like get the interviewing out the way, like who you are as a person. If you're comfortable being that way on camera, off camera, in front of a stranger, in front of your mother, in front of your father, in front of your friend, in front of your girlfriend, you will be super duper comfortable in any situation. So if you're interviewing a UFC fighter, then you interview a rapper, then you interview a porn star, then you interview the president, if you're switching up your ways and you don't know how to act, interview's probably going to come off real finicky and real just fickle and not cool. But if you are super confident in who you are, those are the best interviewers, and I feel like some of my favorite interviewers, I can tell they are themselves and they love and embrace who they are. Like, have you ever watched Russell Brand?
Uh, yeah, I feel like a while ago. I haven't watched recently.
Oh, he's super good. He's like one of my favorite interviewers because he's tapped into like the spirituality. Just
He's
I
a
need
crazy
to.
dude.
Very interesting guy, and if you watch him, I feel like you'll just understand. Like, yo, this guy is so comfortable with who he is and the way he
Yeah.
talks about life. I love this type of stuff. So yeah, that's just some of my favorite interviewers. I realize you
He's
have to be
I know
confident.
I remember. I'm thinking about the last thing I've seen of him, but yeah, he's got that thick accent.
Yeah,
He's just he's a character, man. But those are the kinds of people that you wanna hear talk. And I think it's what's interesting is I think what's hard for even people like maybe me or you who are younger, right, who don't have the career behind them, at least so far, that some of these other people have, is I think sometimes what's hard is also you see maybe like someone who has status who's 40 or 35, 40 who has a career behind them, and they start a podcast and it gets super popular really quick just because of the following they have,
yeah,
right? But the content is not necessarily anything special. And so I think that's also a big thing that's difficult at times because you feel like you put in all this effort, you get this guest, you get the if you're in a studio, you're paying for the studio, you're paying for X, Y, and Z, and maybe you don't get the numbers you want. But for me, I think it's also just a long game, right? I think hopefully down the line, people and I keep going 5, 10 years and work my ass off, and people look back on the ones that happened in the beginning when I didn't have any fan base, right? And I think but that I'm just saying that to show that also like people like Russell Brand or Joe Rogan and stuff like that, you appreciate the people that don't just use their name to get those views. You
yeah.
appreciate the ones that are truly good at what they do, and people like Brand, people like Rogan, people like God, I don't even know. There's so many, but there's the it's a really it's a weird world. This world of like podcasts and interviewing and episode and stuff like that is just and especially these days with the deal that Rogan just signed. You see how much money's in it. You see how much you see the potential in it. You see that maybe it's a top heavy industry. Not everyone's making a lot of money from it, but it's the future in my opinion. So for people like you and me who are 20, 21, to just keep working, and if you do it, professionally and the right way, in my opinion, then it'll pay off somehow, some way down the line.
I think you said something interesting because you saying us being young. I forget which interview it was, but you said that you are like a kid basically, but you don't want your work to look like kid work. You want it to look like professional adult work. And I remember me and my friend Spencer, we would always talk about being young, and like we want to do stuff when we're young because it's always more like looked at more cool when you're young, because if you're like 50 doing something, it's like, you're supposed to do that. But if you're like 19, 20, it's like, yo, you got this big empire and you barely can even drink. So I've always thought that was a cool way to look at it. And the way you say that, you're young but you don't want to do young man's work, I think that's a very like sophisticated way to put that for sure.
No, thank you. And I think for me, it was really like when I first started it, I was 19, and you know I just think, well, first I'm just someone who's like super perfectionist mentality of like, if my audio doesn't sound good, if my video doesn't look good, if it's grainy. I mean, no one likes to listen to something that sounds terrible,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it was like, all right, I'm 19. There's no reason that anybody's going to listen to something that I put out there over anybody else, unless the content is A, good, because that's first and foremost. But B, it sounds good. It sounds like something you want to listen to. There's a million podcasts out there, so why choose to spend your time listening to mine over someone else's? Well, content is good, it sounds good, it's professional, so you want it to, and what's always like flattering sometimes is I'll have a guest and they'll ask me and they'll be like, oh, how old are you? And maybe they'll say like they'll guess and they'll be like, are you 25, 27, and stuff like that's flattering, because at least it shows that they feel like I have maybe a production level that's really professional, or it just feels like something that's maybe past what maybe one would expect from a 19-year-old. So it's just there's I really thought about it in the beginning as investing in myself. Just whether if I'm spending a little extra money on studio time or an audio person to help me out, it's all just like investments in myself, and it gets costly, so that's why maybe having a sponsor in here or there is really important. But ultimately, there's so many different ways to do it. It's just about I think really putting in the effort, because you can see when products come out with no effort, and not half-assing it, just going full on, and seeing really where it goes, and what opportunities arise. And so many opportunities already have come up, even just being interviewed by people like you. Great show, and just show the interest just means so much. Like a year ago, I never thought that anybody would want me to be on their show. So stuff like that is super cool, and I've been able to get really close to some people I never thought that I would be close to. So there's so much that you think might happen one way, and you realize it doesn't happen at all the way you thought, and sometimes for the better.
Bro, investing in yourself is one of the most important things. Like last night, I literally spent $300 on some books. I was like, bro, I don't know if I should do this. I was like, I did not want to spend $300 on books, but I did it because I was like, you know what? I'm gonna better who I am if I buy these books. So I do think investing in yourself is interesting. I mean, hey, it took me like 4 years to get decent video and audio quality. Like I didn't understand how to do it. Finally clicked, but I had to invest in myself to do it. I had to buy a MacBook. I had to do this. I had to do that. So, yeah, man, investing in yourself is interesting. When did you realize that? Like, not even in the interview, but just like in general in life. Like, when did you realize
It's
investing in you was interesting? Or it's important?
it's a weird thing, this idea of investing in yourself, because I think it people like misconstrue that idea, right? They don't really understand what it means to invest in yourself. And for me, investing in yourself is, because we're young and we don't have all the money in the world, right? You have limited resources, so it's about, okay, I have X amount of money. Let me find perhaps other ways to bring in some money a little bit at a time, right? Because I think having little revenue flows, big or small, is just always important. Um, but then it's really like maximizing your results for that money, right?
Mm.
Realizing, maximizing not just your money, but maximizing your time,
Mm.
right? I'm really bad with all this technical stuff. If I need to do some editing on an episode and it sounds shitty and there's just different things like that, one, I don't really have the time these days, and two, if I have someone who's going to do it for X amount of dollars and I feel like it's worth it, do it, because I'll be able to save time, and that saving of time means I can maybe write more emails to a sponsor, write more emails to a new guest that'll boost my brand, right? So just all these different things of understanding um, what those investments really mean, and if they're worthy of investing, right? And I think for me, just investing in myself also just means like I have 39, I think right now, episodes. I've recorded maybe a couple extra that I'll release soon, and it's about making for me every episode as its own kind of strong piece of work,
Mm.
right? So that down the line, when I'm 20, like Joe Rogan started his 10 years ago, okay? And the guy's 54. So, he started what, around 44, 43, whatever it is. Um, just imagine, if he had started at 19 or 20, the
Yeah.
way that you and I have the opportunity of doing. He didn't have that technology back then. So, just imagine the opportunity that's there, and if you are willing to put those investments, and put that money into you know your audio, your video quality, getting the right computer, if it means getting a studio, stuff like that, then then down the line, when you're presenting yourself to a company that you hope might invest in you or sponsor you, you can be like, look at everything I did. Look at the level of professionalism that it's at. I'm showing you that I'm capable of this at 20, 21, 22. Like, and then you land a bigger you can land bigger sponsors, bigger money, bigger, maybe, and I'm not even talking about sponsors and stuff like that, but maybe by doing this kind of interview, right, somebody will watch it, maybe somebody who then is in a field that you're interested in working in one day, and they'll be like, wow, this person's legit,
Yeah.
I liked what they said here. They produced it the right way. Hey, let me offer them a job. Let me do this. You don't know what's going to happen. So, I think investing in yourself goes in a lot of different ways. But, for me, it's really just been about production and, getting the guests. And when opportunity arises to get a guest, to go and make that happen. And, you know, it's just a lot of things to think about in terms of maximizing resources and time and energy, because this stuff is tiring. I mean, it's tiring to plan, it's tiring to record, it's tiring to do research, it's tiring to produce. So it's a lot of different things that go into that investment mentality.
Bro, I have like 200 plus interviews at this point,
Wow.
and you have what, like you're in your 50-ish range, right? So
30, yeah, 39, 40, something like that.
40, 30 range. So you're in that range, and all the videos are quality. A lot of my videos at the beginning, they were with actually people with names, but they were okay quality or whatnot. So I think that investing yourself in any field, like even if it's this, if you're a sports player, you got to invest in yourself in the best workouts, the best coaches, the best facilities and
Recovery. I mean,
everything.
like LeBron spends $1 million a year on just on recovery alone.
Crazy.
And granted, LeBron has money, but like still, he realizes that by investing $1 million a year in someone who's going to give him massages every day,
Yeah.
in ice baths, in cryotherapy, and all those different things, he's then able to perform at a higher level, which means he'll then be able to bring in more money. Which in reality, the $1 million gets paid back in a few games, and so it's that kind of mentality when you start thinking like that is really important in my opinion.
And I feel like when you really start to make it, other people start to notice. So, or when you really not really start to make it, when you really start to make strides in your production and your quality of content, people start to notice, and you have sponsors, and a lot of people way bigger than you, they can't get sponsors for whatever reason, but you have sponsors. People realizing like, yo, this guy, he has something going on. I don't know what it is, but it's something, and we want to hop on board before he's Joe Rogan status, and he's like, I don't want your sponsor anymore. So I think that's cool. Like now that you have sponsors, is that something that shocked you as well? Like wow, like I'm actually getting paid to do this. Like people are paying me to
Yeah,
talk about their product.
it's it was so weird because I'd always thought about this idea of, okay, how are we gonna monetize it, right? I knew that there was money in this world. I didn't know anything really of how it worked, right? But I was like, look, I have these costs every week of producing an episode, and I did it in a way that I think was probably more costly than I could have,
Mm.
and there are little ways, that I figured out as I went through it of where I can save money here, where it's actually worth spending X amount of dollars on this. But I was, it, when you buy a computer and you buy a microphone, you buy this and that, it gets really expensive really quick. And then if you're in a studio, like I am, that gets really expensive really quickly too. So, um, I was lucky enough that after a couple episodes, after I was sending out thousands and thousands of emails to different companies, seeing if they were willing. And after, I had one company, my first sponsor, it's still my sponsor today. It's a company called U.S. Wellness Meats. They make a bunch of like, seafood and meat, like organic meat, whatever, and ship it out. And they were like, yeah, we'll sponsor you for, it was like a small sum. And I was so excited. Like, I was just like, wow, that's crazy. Like, somebody's actually going to pay me to talk about their company. Like,
Yeah.
I had thought that, okay, maybe after a year or two, if I have a sponsor, I'll be excited. Um, and then only after a couple episodes, I'm like, wait, if they're willing to do, to give me just this little amount of money right now, like, what happens when I have 30, 40 episodes, when I have 100 episodes at a really high level? Like, there's opportunity here. So, for me right now, I'm still at a point where I take all the money that comes in, I just reinvest it. That idea of reinvesting it into some other aspect, right? For a while, I didn't really work on a YouTube channel. It's only been a month or two that I started working on a YouTube channel, and then you see the results come in at least a little bit quicker.
Mm.
So it's for me right now, I'm not looking to make money off of it right now, right? I'm more trying to play the long game of, let's take the money that comes in, reinvest into better production, reinvest it if I need to travel to see a guest. If I can do these things in person, I'll always prefer that, right? Because, I think just being in person is always nicer if you can do it. And, try to figure out what's worth it, what's not. But, yeah, to think that some company, and it's also, for my brand of sorts, right? It's to be associated with some of these companies that sponsor me is really cool, too, because when they sponsor a UFC champion and I'm sponsored by them too, I'm like, holy shit, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect that at all. So it is weird when I get a check to think, wow, like there's money coming in, even if it's not Joe Rogan money, it's still something. So So it just shows me the opportunity, and it shows me as I go, I can ask for more. I can start to learn the ins and outs of the industry, right? How much I can really truly be asking for, how much I'm worth, how much an advertising spot is worth on my show, and you go from there. But at least right now, it's and I'm also, I mean, I don't think I've even talked about this because it just happened. I just signed a deal to produce and manage another podcast of two former Mafia guys that I had on my show, a guy named John A. Light and Gene Borello. So I'll be managing and sponsoring and producing their show, or at least working with that. So for that now, because of the work that I've done with sponsors and writing out to them and seeing the ins and outs of how it works, now I'll be able to negotiate better contracts for them, right? Because I know what kind of money they could be making. So there's so much going on, especially in this podcast world on the business and financial side, that I think that more people need to exploit, not to exploit, but to take advantage of, because companies are willing to spend a lot of money into advertising, into podcasts. And for me, I always think about it like, I could be doing, if I'm recording an episode and I don't have maybe the sponsor that I want, or I don't have as many advertising spots that I would have liked, I'm thinking this is money I'm losing out on, right? Because this episode is going to happen anyways. Let's see if I can get someone to throw an ad in there and make an extra $50 on it. Why not? It takes me a minute to talk about a product if I agree with it, and so it's just all these different things to think about. But at 20, I'm happy that I'm starting to know these things, because if my show does get big, and I hope it will, then I'll be able to really understand the ins and outs and hopefully really make substantial money down the line, because that would be really cool.
I think that is really cool. I mean, after this interview, you definitely got to let me know about the sponsors, because I definitely have no idea how the sponsors work. So off camera, you definitely got to educate me on that, because I'm very interested. And it's interesting that you said that, because I heard that you said that you wanted to be a NFL general manager or something along those lines. So
you've done your research to know that. Yeah, that was always my my dream job.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if it's still the dream job. There's because I really like what I'm doing right now, and I want to do something where I'm working in sports. I've always been a sports kind of junkie my whole life, and I just think I've always been confident in my ability to analyze different athletes' levels and see what pieces work together, negotiate contracts. So that general manager kind of mentality is really fun for me. But whether it be an agent or even broadcasting could be a lot of fun, because I do like being behind a mic. I like being, there's nothing like live sports, and when you're right there, those moments, those UFC championship fights, or those big NFL games is can't compare. I could imagine. I don't know, but it's probably so special. So there's just there's a lot of different ways in which I could see this going, but what's crazy is that there have already been so many opportunities that have come about just by me having this show around. I mean, a guy like I don't know if you watch a lot of UFC, but John Anik, for anyone who watches UFC, John Anik is main commentator, play-by-play commentator for UFC, and I had him on my show, and him and I are now close. He'll follow me he follows me on Instagram, and he'll comment on some of my stuff. And I know that maybe down the line, if I was, interested in doing and trying to get into that world, I could go to someone like him for advice. Maybe he could help me out. We'll see. But there's just, I don't know what's going to happen. But what's really exciting is that I get to, kind of dip my feet into all these different worlds and see, maybe it is the general manager route if that opportunity arises. Maybe I get a really big contract for the sponsor. I mean, for the podcast, and all of a sudden making a lot of money to do my show. Yeah. Who knows? So, I'm keeping the door open, and right now it's just, we're 2021. It's just about keeping your head down and grind, and the rest will come in due time,
Anik has such a commentator voice. In that interview with you and him, it literally sounds like he's gonna call a knockout, like as he's talking to you. Like he's like, Felix, he's like the way I'm like, yo, who's gonna get knocked out right now? Like he has such a commentating voice. It is hilarious listening to him talk. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, the way you're definitely intertwining the sports world with your interviewing and just seeing how it goes. You're just letting it, because I feel the same way. I don't know what I'm going to be doing 10 years from now. Just kind of letting it, just the boat sail. I'm kind of just flowing with the ocean. Wherever it takes me at this point.
And at think for you also is like you've been doing it for much longer than I have, and you probably, if you have 200 episodes, that's 200 people that, I mean, you might be close to some, you might not be close at all to others, right? That happens. But there are at least people that, the ones that were really taken aback by some of your good questions and stuff like that, I'm sure you hit them up down the line if you want to go into a field that's similar to theirs, and you're like, hey, like, is there any way you could help me? Like, I'm really interested in doing this. And because you had that moment with them where you sat down or called them, and they know how you think, they know that you're articulate, they know that you're intelligent, then they'll be like, yeah, they want to vouch for you, right? Who doesn't want to help a 20 or 22-year-old that they believe in, that they know is legit, right? So you and I think are doing, everything we can to at least put ourselves in the best situation for success down the line, right?
Yeah.
Because no one knows what's going to happen, but you and I think, are at least really taking those steps to just, I think for me, I view life as really like a percentage game, right? Some people are lucky and they fall in the right place at the right time. Some people go TikTok famous for no reason, I mean, who knows, right? Some people can grind their whole lives, and after 10 years of work, they have their shining moment, right? Some people, it takes one viral episode. You never know. However, for me, it's about how can I put myself in the best situation for success. Give myself the best opportunity or the best chance. And I think, and for me, it's really percentage-wise of, if I do X, maybe I have a better chance of achieving Y. So it's just like, how do I continue to put myself in that position? And, I think developing these connections with people, not just interviewing them, but being able to also express yourself, and so that they see that you're legit, is another way. When there's a big thing for me that I think about all the time is a lot of kids are like, oh yeah, I need to really do better with my networking, right? There's this big misconception, I think, that networking means shaking someone's hand, right? Networking for me is like truly knowing someone, right? And I think that too many kids are relying, they're like, oh yeah, well, I have to network, and sending an email out or doing one thing isn't enough. I think getting to know the people, not just because they're going to be of some use in the future, right? Because I think that when you're just using someone for that purpose, it's going to be inauthentic anyways. But when you show genuine curiosity and you start really talking to them, and you keep a relationship over time, and maybe they're following you on social media, they see your rise, they see how you're producing your stuff, then, when the time comes and it's been 4 or 5 years of that, and you go to them and you're like, hey, and at that point maybe they're your friend or they're someone that you've talked to multiple times, then they're gonna want to help you over anybody else, right? So for me, it's really about, for the people that I've stayed close with, in an authentic way, I just really try to, be either their friend or someone that I can help them in any way that I can. And, because I know that they know that I have good intentions, and I'm just trying to, work on my life and my professional career, I know that there are a lot of them would hope, and I hope, would want to help me down the line, right? And some might not, some might have no interest, but, when you have 200, like you, maybe even if only 5 or 10 of them want to help you, then that's all you really need. It only takes really one person that believes in you, and it could be an opportunity of a lifetime.
Well, doing 200 interviews, I've realized that most people are selfish, and they're definitely not going to want to help you at all, because people are in it for them, and people, like, I don't know, they see you as either competition. Even if you're not in the same lane, they're just like, why would I help this guy? I don't know this guy, or whatever. And they may present a persona on Instagram or Twitter or their songs or their podcasts or whatever, like I'm this one way, but then they're actually not that way. They're much more selfish, self-interest type people. And doing that, I have met people who are definitely, I guess, genuine, and people that are real, the people that will, look out for you, you look out for them, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so as long as you keep doing this, you'll definitely see that most people, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I feel like most people definitely do not care about, like, helping at all, because, I don't know, people are selfish.
I guess it really, it depends, right? Everyone's different. But if you have, up to 200, if even just a couple, want to help you or see something in you, then that's really all that matters, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, because the reality is you're not going to be close to every guest. Yeah. I've had that, and I've been lucky because most of my guests, I'd say maybe like 7 of every 10 or 6 of every 10. I'll stay in touch with in some capacity over time, and I'd say maybe 10% I'm actually really close with. I've seen outside, I've had dinners, and just different kind of things like that. And even those relationships make everything worth it, right? Even if the other 90% I never talk to, it's those people that I really it's crazy to think that I'm close with them. So it's different for everyone, but I guess that's what makes it fun because you don't really know what's gonna happen. You know.
And I feel like I said, the way you are tying in the sports with the journalism is cool to me. And I'm a big sports guy myself, so I'm curious, who are your sports teams, your sports favorite sports figures or whatever? As I go get this water, I can hear you, so yeah, let me know.
I mean, for me, my big kind of sports idol growing up was Kobe. Rest in peace. He was someone that even I was young, and I would have his jersey, and I'd be like playing basketball in my room, and just him as a person, and just his Mamba mentality and working hard and all that. I was devastated when that happened a few months ago. Still so sad. I mean, I think people got distracted because of Corona, but
It
it's
doesn't even
still
feel
very,
real. It doesn't even feel
yeah.
real. That's
It
crazy.
doesn't. It really doesn't. So he was always my number. If not number one of my top two. Guys that I really looked up to. My teams. I'm actually a big Dallas Cowboys fan.
Mm.
It's unpopular, especially in New York, but because my dad, he had an autographed shirt from 1970 when he was a kid that he gave to me. So then it kind of passed down in the family. So those are my teams. Or that's my main team. Um, and then basketball. I mean, I'm always rooting for the Knicks as a New Yorker, but they kind of suck. But there's so many different athletes. I go down the line of who I respect and who I like. I just love these people that these athletes that work hard, and there's so much. I mean, right now we don't have a lot of sports, but there's so much beauty in all these sports moments. I mean, sometimes it might be they had a hardship, maybe a parent passed away and they're playing a few days later. I mean, there's so many beautiful sports stories, and there's really nothing like sports, and I miss it right now, but when I'll get back into it, then man, I think we'll all be super excited when it goes back to a regular schedule, and hopefully one day with fans, and that atmosphere. I mean, there's nothing like a championship game with a packed arena of 60,000 people and everything on the line. So sports are special.
Can you hear that in the background?
No,
Oh, it's like raining really hard. You know if you can hear that. It's going really
where
good.
are you out? Where are you based out of?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida right now, and
Okay.
yeah. Speaking of Jacksonville, Jaguars totally ass. They really are a bad team.
Are you a Jaguars fan?
Never have been a Jaguars fan.
What are your teams?
Oh man, it's actually really bad because being in Jacksonville and not being a Jaguar fan, it's just terrible. You get roasted, you get bullied. It is bad. I grew up being, it's crazy to say this, a Patriot fan. And
Oh wow.
yeah, that's that's what I get. Oh wow, really? Why? That's what I get. And yeah, that's a very unpopular thing down here.
Wait, I just
And
lost you.
huh?
I just lost you. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's a very unpopular thing being a Patriot fan down here, and yeah, it was a very bad season for us last year. Not very bad, but it was just very what's the word? It's very uncharacteristic season down here, and yeah. Shout out to the Patriots though. I think we're gonna rebuild and do our thing hopefully. What's going on with the
I don't
Cowboys
know.
though?
Man, Dak Prescott wants so much money for no reason, and I don't know. I hope that he stops being greedy. I love Dak, but I think he's being a little greedy right now, and hopefully we have a season that looks normal, and probably no fans, but at least we get some football going. That would be nice. Who knows?
I'm
We'll
an
see
Andy
what this
Dalton
year.
guy. I like Andy Dalton. I'm not
Quite
anti
frankly,
Andy
could
Dalton.
be our quarterback if Dak continues with this money nonsense. Because he's good, and I don't think Dak's worth like the $45 million in his last year that he's asking for. So, or even really 35 or 40. I mean, I love him, but I don't think he deserves to be the highest paid quarterback ever.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Andy Dalton could very well be our quarterback. I would not be super surprised.
Would you be mad about that?
I would be a little upset that Dak got so greedy because I think we have a decent system with him there, and I think he's really showing progress every year. But I don't think Andy Dalton's a starting part. He's a starting quarterback. He's good, and I think he got injured and had a couple bad seasons. But I remember when he was really, really good.
Yeah.
And if he's our quarterback, I think we'll be fine. We've got some unreal receivers. We've got Zeke, arguably the best running back in the league. And that offense, the defense is starting to come together. I mean, I think it would change things up if it was Andy at quarterback. I think I like Dak there, but we'll see. I wouldn't be disappointed. It's not like we're getting a backup quarterback either.
Well, hey, one more thing I want to bring up before we get out here. I don't want to keep it for too long. It was something interesting that I thought you brought up, and maybe I heard you wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, in one of your interviews, you brought up that you are a person, or you bring up in a couple of interviews that you struggle with PTSD.
I don't struggle with PTSD, but I've talked about it with a bunch of my guests.
Okay. So PTSD is something, or just mental health in general, is something that interests me, and I didn't know like the background. If why was that something that interested you so much that you talked about it with other people so much?
Right. So I had a few guests, and these were actually some of my Johnny Light, who's now one of the people from the Mafia show that I'm producing. He was a former Mafia guy who worked for John Gotti. And he was talking to me about PTSD, just because after, everything that he did, which, a lot of it was really bad, he recognizes that now, of course. He went to jail for a while, and he went to some really bad jails, like some of the worst Brazilian penitentiaries. And so he was talking to me about PTSD, but, from a more general mental health perspective, I think it's really interesting to sit down with a lot of these people because they have the same mental health issues that everyone else has. They're still people. I think 70-80% of my guests all go to therapy and have mentioned it to me at some point on the episodes, where they'll talk about the therapist or when they did this or that. So it just shows that they're real people too, in the same way that you and I have our daily mental health struggles and whatnot. They do as well. But I think I think especially I think there was a time 20-30 years ago where people didn't talk about it at all, and now we're at a point where people talk about it way more. But I still think that there's stigmas around it. But I do think it's an interesting thing to talk about, especially with highly successful people, right? Because a lot of times you think like, oh, these celebrities or these successful people don't have this issue or that issue, and maybe they don't have this issue or that issue, but they'll have a completely other issue. So there's always something mental health related, and I think that therapy is really important. I mean, I have a therapist. I tell myself to do it consistently on a weekly basis, whether I'm doing great or not. It's just, I think it's, when things are going bad, it's good to talk to someone. When things are going good, it's good to talk to someone so that you make sure it doesn't go bad, right? So it's just like, there's always different things to improve, but I think, I personally have really enjoyed it. I haven't done it for a long time, but in my short experience with it, it's great. And I think I was one of those people for a while who was like, yeah, I don't need it. It might be for someone else who's struggling, and I don't think that that's true at all. I think people who are struggling should definitely check it out. But I think that people who feel like they don't need it, or might be having a smaller thing here or there, should check it out or should do something therapy related. Because I just think it's a good way to check yourself every day, every week. And there's so many benefits that I never thought I would have coming from it. And for me, I've never, luckily, suffered from anything too traumatic from any PTSD myself. But just on a weekly basis to talk to someone is just really helpful.
I'm a psychology major, so I appreciate you talking about mental health and mental health advocacy and stuff like that. That's something that I've always liked to hear, so I definitely appreciate that. And
would you want to go into psychology, like more as a profession?
Well, I really don't know. I talked about this in my Adam Lefko interview, where I basically said that I had a theory that I didn't want to do journalism or broadcasting because I think that I could use psychology more in this field if I didn't go into psychology realm, because in psychology sociology. It really just shows you how people work, how the mind works, what they do, how to converse with people, what not to do, body language. And I feel like that really works when you're talking to humans, because you can know what not to say to a certain person but say it to another person. Or when you can visually see somebody's body getting uncomfortable, you're like, okay, let me stray away from that conversation. And I just think that's something that really, like, conversing is interviewing. When you're interviewing somebody, you have to converse. And I feel like conversing is a very major point in psychology, in how to converse and how to relay messages and how to take messages. And I think that really works for me. But if this never worked out, I would definitely probably do something in the psychology field for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I think for you, to be honest, just in talking to you for an hour, I think there's a level, and as you've said about other guests, it's just comfortable talk, right? I think you have a really good ability to make people comfortable, and I think that whether it's through psychology or through interviews, I think that it's remarkable whenever I see someone that's as young as we are, to really think about the psyche behind everything that's going on in either a successful person or your ordinary person, right? Because you realize that these people have a lot of the same issues, and I think that there's so much to be learned. Like, there's so much to be learned from the way that people act, and the way that you then want to act and carry yourself and stuff like that. So I think psychology, even though it's not something that I would go into as a just for me personally, it's something that really interests me. But I shout out to all the therapists out there and the people that do that work, because it's a really tough and a job that carries a lot of baggage with it, and they have to listen to a lot of really tough situations on a daily basis. And even if that's something that I feel like I maybe wouldn't be as good at doing, you got to respect all the people that do that kind of social work, because man, we need those people.
Hey man, I definitely agree with you. Like I said, don't want to keep it for too long. I appreciate you setting up time for us to talk. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be people in the comments say, "Wow, you interviewed Shia LaBeouf." I can't be the only person that think you like Shia LaBeouf.
One of my good friends' dad said I look like him.
Can't be the. I knew I wasn't the only person. I'm like, yo, this looks just like Shia LaBeouf. This is crazy. But for people watching right now, I really want you guys to go watch him. Not just saying this, I'm interviewing him. Wouldn't interview him if I didn't care for you guys to watch him. I really want everybody to watch this whole thing through. Obviously, you did if you're watching this part, and watch him. Subscribe to him. I'm gonna have your stuff linked below, your Instagram, your YouTube, that and that. And I really hope I can get you at least 5 subscribers, at least 5. I just want to get you a little bit, because I really think that you're too talented and you have too much potential to go unnoticed. So if I could do anything, which isn't a lot, I just want to do a little bit. If so, man.
Hey, I really appreciate that, and likewise, I know you already have a lot of episodes, a lot of really good numbers and stuff like that. So I hope that that continues for you, and that I really appreciate you wanting to help me and give me a platform like that. So that really means the world, and just continue doing what you're doing, because we're in the same boat, and you're farther along, and I've done it for longer. So that's really cool for me to see what someone who's been in it at my age, who's been doing it for longer, and what that looks like, right? But someone listening to this and they haven't subscribed to you yet, then they better do that right now. And but I really appreciate the time, and if there's anything that I can do to help you in any way, then you let me know, and I appreciate it, man.
Well, when the corona dies down, I hope to go to New York soon. So hopefully I could be blessed to be on your podcast, man. Hopefully one of these days, man. Definitely gotta set that up. So for the people watching, until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters are gonna hate, players are gonna play, and you guys holler at your boy.